Hey guys, before I start, I would love it if you hit the subscribe button because I'm a small YouTuber, and would really love to make more of these, so let's begin. Today I'm going to debunk a video called Why Anarcho-Capitalism is Not Real Anarchism, from a YouTuber named Thought Slime, where he claims that anarcho-capitalism isn't real anarchism.
So-called anarcho-capitalists are not anarchists, even a little bit?
His reasoning for this is because he claims that, to be an anarchist, or to have an anarchist state, you need to have no hierarchies, or a system that doesn't influence hierarchies to become more prevalent, and the reason why this is purely incorrect is because the most widely accepting definition of an anarchist system within a country is anarchism is a political philosophy and movement that is skeptical of the government. Anarchism calls for the abolition of the state, which it holds to be undesirable, unnecessary, and harmful. Or, another common definition is anarchy is the state of a society being freely constituted without authorities or a governing body. And through capitalism it doesn't disobey any of this basic philosophy, but you may argue that capitalism is against this because it says without authority, and in an ANCAP state you would have private police force that most people would pay for, and there would be structures to the society such as employment structure, that would cause hierarchies, but the is that there's no force that prevents you from completely ignoring the private police. But my biggest problem with this idea is that any society, except from transhumanism, where everyone doesn't have a consciousness, you will always without a doubt have hierarchies in any system we try to create, because humans are preconditioned to create order everywhere we are, because we have evolved to seek hierarchies. Even if we return to tribes, in anarcho-primitivism, you would still have some form of hierarchy. Jordan Peterson talks about this in his work and literature if you're interested.
Anarchism is a spectrum of ideologies that are opposed to unjustified hierarchies, be they political, social, economic, or any other axis of oppression that people invent. The term was coined to describe oneself politically by Pierre-Joseph Poonhound.
Firstly, yes, Pierre-Joseph Proudhon was a famous figure in the world of anarchism, and arguably the founder of anarchism, but my problem with going of a definition of someone, just because they were the original person who created it, isn't always the greatest definition, because things, ideas, and especially political ideologies will evolve and change over time, and different subgenres of things will be created too, and also he only represents Marxist anarchism, because he was a famous communist figure in the 1800s, because he wrote a well-known book about why private ownership of land is theft, and also was a good friend of Karl Marx.
An, meaning without, archos, meaning rulers, and y, meaning make the word sound cooler. Capitalism is an economic system typified by these three things. 1. Private control of the means of production. That's a hierarchy. 2. Free exchange of goods and services on the market. 3. Wage labor. That's also a hierarchy. It sucks.
He claims here that because there is order and hierarchy to anarcho-capitalism, it's not anarchism, but because there's order such as corporate order, which as I've already stated doesn't define anarchism, and how any form of anarchy will never be truly anarchist. But I think a great way to define a system to be anarchist or not, is to see if it tries to minimize forced hierarchies as much as possible, or it will allow any individual to avoid it, and that's exactly what anarcho-capitalism does. It takes away the state so there's no ultimate power deciding what you can and can't do, and through the private police force you can fully bear the consequences of your actions.
Anarcho-capitalism is the belief that the state should be dismantled, but capitalism should somehow be maintained, which they think would work. They believe everyone should follow the non-aggression principle, which basically means you shouldn't initiate or threaten to initiate violence against someone or their property.
I personally believe that the non-aggression principle, or NAP, is a great ideology to follow in any society, which, as he said, don't hurt people, or steal their property, is probably a great philosophy. Would you disagree? Also, for some reason at the end, it says slaves are okay for some reason, which is literally hypocritical to NAP anyway, so I don't understand why he put that in. In the next 2 minutes, he brings up some true and some untrue things. Firstly, he discusses why an anarchist state was created, and what it was made to protect, and this included that a tyrannous government can commit mass genocide, or can create a ethno-state, or a state could inflict harsh boundaries, and take away people's rights. Also, to add to this, the government can also take away people's right to bear arms, and the right to free speech. Furthermore, the government can never fully represent everyone, and the reason for this is because the government is simply too large to be able to get everyone's opinion on a matter. For example, the best system we have is somewhere between a democracy and totalitarian state, because a complete democracy is mob rule, and political minorities will never have a say in how the country is run. And totalitarianism causes a system where no one can have any individual say in how the country is run. But in an anarchist state, because everybody can decide what laws and obligations you want to abide by, and suffer the consequences of doing something that isn't socially accepted and so on, which are all great reasons why the government can sometimes be bad. But then he goes on and talks about some untrue things, such as Systems such as laissez-faire, or the complete free market, can't work without the government, without a doubt is incorrect, because when you have a system that puts the center of politics into the market and abandon the state, then the free market can fully flourish without government restriction within the market and be able to lower the price of things, higher the quality, and give a variety in what it sells through competition of other contesting companies. Then he moves on and gives an example, which states if in an anarcho-capitalist system within a town, and there was one singular well that the people of the village needs for water, and the well was owned by an individual, through his purchase of the property, that because he owns it that man can be greedy with an ancap state and the rest of the people will die from a lack of water. But this could not be further from the truth. I know bit weird of an example judging from a first world country like America where this usually would not happen. But anyway, when you let the private sector of private companies to have the freedom to go where they choose and lessen restrictions, then the people of that town can get water, because clearly in that town there is a giant market for some form of water source. Therefore, if a corporate identity moves over there, sells his products of bottled water like he does everywhere else, then he will get more customers for his business and increase profits for himself and his company, and because of competition there will be many companies trying to get the most amount of clients, therefore that will encourage the price to drop rapidly. Then everyone in that city will now be able to drink, and the man with well would have just lost a lot of money just because he was being wasteful with the market. Then you may argue that what happens if a company or individual who sells water sees that there is an increase in demand for the water and takes advantage, so he raises the price, which does not work in the slightest because a competitive company will see that these people need lower prices for water and will sell his water for less and still cover expenses and take all the clients from the other company, and that will then make the other company decrease their price, and so on.
Remember Proudhound, the first person to call themselves an anarchist? He was rather fond of the saying, property is theft. Anarchists tend to agree, because allowing property to be owned privately inevitably results in the accumulation of property by the few at the expense of the many.
So here he talks about if you give the market and property trading freely to the people, then the top percents will have more than the majority, which yes is correct, but he does not explain what is wrong with this, because when you have a society, there will be different types of people with different personalities and perspectives to life. Therefore you will get people who are more industrious, conscientious, and also people who are more willing to focus on getting more fortune and becoming more wealthy. Therefore you will get what is called Price's law, which states that the square root of things in any domain will do or have half of it. Therefore, going of this, you can see how in a society there will be specific types of people who are well driven to succeed, and they will have more of the land or wealth. Just a side note, but people sometimes expect, because someone has more than you, they have stolen it from you one way or another, which is completely wrong, and a bad way to look at capitalism. And the reason for this is because to become rich in a market it's extremely hard to get far and succeed if you use predatory behavior, such as stealing and conning, because if you do this sort of thing, then people would not buy your product or people will not want to do deals with you, therefore you become poorer. But if you treat people with respect, stand by your word, act industrious, work 80 hours a week, you are smart, you can act and evolve with your surroundings, and you are determined to build a career as an entrepreneur, then you will get far in a market driven by society, and then they are the type of people to become rich, and are in the 1%.
That's an economic hierarchy, my dude. Hierarchies have rulers. You can't subscribe to without rulersism if you want rulers. Even if you think those rulers deserve to rule, you're still a ruler, you ding-a-ling.
I understand what he's saying here, but the thing is, that I don't subscribe to the idea of rulerism in the first place, because, if someone has more than you they rule you, but as we know that's not how capitalism works. If someone has more than you, you're not less than them, they're just in a different social economic position to you.
I think it's fair to say I have some misgivings about ancapism, but my objection to them being called anarchists is not simply because I disagree with them or I don't like them. It's because their ideology is not that thing.
Just to add, I'm not personally an anarcho-capitalist, and would agree that the government does have some very good and useful needs, such as protecting the rights of people who can't physically fend for themselves, and people who can't afford a private police force and so on. Also, thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.